The oak dining table had stood in that Chicago apartment for over 20 years. A solid, handmade reminder of the nights Clara and Gwen had spent working double shifts in the ER, raising her daughter alone after her husband's death. Now at 55, retired early because of a weakened heart, she sat at the head of that same table on Mother's Day, watching 3 generations share a meal that felt colder than the spring rain outside. Across from her sat Victoria Langford, 78, dignified, polished, and wealthy, the kind of woman who'd never known the price of exhaustion. She was Clara's former mother-in-law, a matriarch whose fortune and influence still loomed over the family. Amelia, Clara's only daughter, beamed as she handed Victoria a gift wrapped in Italian silk. "Mother Victoria," she said proudly, "a 14-day Caribbean cruise on the Icon of the Seas. $15,000. My thank you for paying Liam's Harvard tuition." Victoria adjusted her Versace glasses, smiling with aristocratic approval. "You've always known how to show gratitude, darling." Then Amelia turned toward Clara, her tone suddenly casual. She flicked a Powerball ticket across the table. "And for you, Mom, $2. If you win, we'll split it, okay?" Laughter erupted. Forks clinked. Someone poured wine. Only Clara's hand stayed still. The ticket lay on the table like an insult dressed as a joke. No one there knew the truth, that the $15,000 for Victoria's cruise had come from Clara's savings account, the fund meant for her upcoming heart surgery. Money earned through decades of blood, sweat, and night shifts. She folded the flimsy paper, pressing it between her palms. Her heart hurt, not from illness this time, but from the quiet realization that love, when measured in dollars, always comes at someone's expense. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. The morning light in Chicago was gray and thin, cutting through the blinds like cold needles. Clara sat at her kitchen table with a mug of black coffee, her hand trembling slightly as she logged into her online banking account. The heart monitor on her wrist flickered once, a reminder from her doctor that stress wasn't a luxury she could afford anymore. But as the screen loaded, her pulse began to race anyway. There it was, printed in clean, indifferent letters. Langford Luxury Cruises, $15,000. The date showed it had been processed a full week before Mother's Day. Her throat tightened. She knew that name, Victoria's favorite cruise line. The same one Amelia had mentioned with a proud smile as she handed over that glittering gift box. Clara stared at the screen, then at the digital signature beneath it. Amelia's name. Except it wasn't really Amelia's handwriting. It was hers. The same electronic signature Clara had saved years ago in the family's joint account, for emergencies. Her chest burned. So that's how she did it. She reached for her phone, thumb hovering above her daughter's number for a moment before she pressed call. "Mom!" Amelia's voice came through, brisk, distracted, the tone of someone already halfway through her day. "Amelia," Clara said quietly, fighting to steady her breath. "You took $15,000 from my account without asking?" There was a brief silence, then the sound of a spoon clinking against a cup. "Mom, seriously? The money was just sitting there. You don't need that much now. You're retired, and Mother Victoria deserves something special after all she's done for us." "That money was for my heart surgery," Clara said, voice trembling between disbelief and pain. "You knew that. Every dollar came from years of overtime and skipped holidays." Amelia sighed. "Mom, please don't be dramatic. You're not going to die because of $15,000. Victoria gave us everything, Liam's tuition, the penthouse down payment, connections that built my career. She's family. We owe her." Clara closed her eyes. The words "we owe her" sliced deep. "And what do you owe your mother, Amelia?" Silence. Then the line went dead. 15 minutes later, Clara logged back into her account, opened the Settings tab, and removed Amelia's access permanently. Her fingers moved fast, mechanical, detached, as though this was just another hospital procedure. Cut, clamp, close. When it was done, she leaned back, staring at the framed photo on her shelf. Amelia at age 6 in a homemade nurse's costume, smiling with missing front teeth. When did you start seeing me as a bank account instead of a mother? Her gaze fell on the Powerball ticket still resting by the fruit bowl. The cheap paper looked ridiculous now, a joke that had gone too far. Clara picked it up, crumpled it in her fist, and was ready to throw it in the trash. But something, maybe habit, maybe superstition, made her pause. Old instincts. The same intuition that had kept her alive through 30 years in the ER. She smoothed the ticket slightly, slipped it into the pocket of her worn hospital blouse, and later tucked it into her desk drawer beside her heart medication. Out of sight, out of mind. 3 days passed. Clara spent them in quiet routine, watering her plants, volunteering at the hospital twice a week, and pretending that her chest didn't ache every time she saw Amelia's name on her phone screen. She didn't answer. She didn't trust herself to. That Friday night, the hospital's break room TV flickered with the Powerball draw. She had stayed late after her volunteer shift, helping an intern finish an intake report. The room smelled faintly of coffee and antiseptic. Tonight's jackpot, the anchor announced, smiling through perfect teeth. $150 million. Clara almost turned it off, but something about the numbers drew her eyes. Here are your winning numbers, the voice continued. 8, 19, 27, 41, 56. And the Powerball number 12. The numbers hung in the air like a slow heartbeat. Clara froze. The sequence repeated in her mind, matching the faint imprint she remembered from that crumpled ticket. Her pulse quickened. No, it can't be. She pushed away her coffee, stood abruptly, and hurried down the corridor toward her small office. Her hands shook as she unlocked the drawer, pulled it open, and found the old ticket, creased, nearly forgotten but still legible. One by one, she read the numbers aloud. 8, 19, 27, 41, 56, 12. Her voice cracked. They all matched. Every single one. For a long moment she couldn't move. Her knees buckled, and she had to grip the edge of her desk to stay upright. The room felt suddenly airless. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest, feeling her artificial valve click softly beneath her ribs. God, she whispered. Is this some kind of joke? Her phone buzzed on the table. She hesitated, then picked it up and dialed the Powerball hotline, the one printed in tiny letters on the back of the ticket. It rang twice before a calm female voice answered. Powerball Prize Center, this is Sarah. How may I assist you? Clara swallowed hard. I think I might have the winning ticket. The one for tonight. Could you please check these numbers? Of course, ma'am, the voice replied kindly. Please read them to me. Clara did, her voice breaking halfway through. There was a pause, long enough for her to hear the distant sound of keyboard keys tapping, then the quiet intake of breath from the other end. Ma'am, the woman said finally, her tone shifting. Congratulations. You are in possession of the winning Powerball ticket for $150 million. You'll need to come to our Columbus office within 48 hours for verification. Bring 2 forms of ID. Clara stared at the phone, speechless. Ma'am? Are you still there? Yes. I'm here. Would you like me to repeat the instructions? No, she said softly. I heard you. When she ended the call, she set the phone down carefully, afraid that if she moved too quickly, the dream would vanish. Her breath came shallow, almost soundless. She sank into the chair and stared at the ticket lying in her open palm. $2 of paper. 2 decades of struggle. And now $150 million of irony. For years, life had given her emergencies. Heart attacks, car crashes, empty bank accounts. A daughter who mistook generosity for virtue. Now it handed her something she didn't know how to process. Luck. Real absurd, impossible luck. She thought of Amelia. Her confidence, her cruelty, her unshakable faith that wealth justified everything. She thought of the cruise, the laughter, the humiliation. Then slowly, a strange calm came over her. The kind nurses used to find in the middle of chaos. Clara folded the ticket, placed it back in its plastic sleeve and whispered to no one. All right. Let's see what you're really worth, my dear. The hum of the vending machine filled the silence. Outside, the city lights blinked against the dark glass windows, as if the universe itself were winking back at her. For the first time in years, Clara smiled. Not with triumph, not even with joy, but with quiet, measured grace. The kind that comes when a woman finally realizes the world may wound her, but it can't decide her worth. 6 hours later, the peace that had briefly returned to Clara's apartment shattered. The sound of the front door slamming open echoed down the hall, followed by hurried footsteps and a sharp voice trembling with fury. "Mom!" Amelia's tone cracked like glass. "They called me from the lottery commission. Someone at the office said your name is on the winner's list. $150 million. Oh my God, we did it. We're millionaires." Clara didn't move. She sat calmly at the kitchen table, a teapot steaming gently beside her, the same floral china set she'd used for 20 years. Without a word, she reached into the drawer and pulled out a transparent plastic sleeve. Inside it, perfectly preserved, was the Powerball ticket. She laid it on the table between them like a surgeon revealing an X-ray. "You mean I am," Clara said softly. "Not we." Amelia blinked, her face contorting from confusion to outrage. "Mom, what are you talking about? You wouldn't even have that ticket if I hadn't bought it for you. Remember? It was a Mother's Day gift. You said you'd keep it for luck." "Yes," Clara replied evenly. "You called it a gift. And gifts, Amelia, are not something one can take back." For a moment, the room went still except for the low hiss of the kettle. Amelia's jaw dropped. "You can't be serious. I was joking when I said you could keep the winnings. Come on, Mom. Everyone already knows. They called me from the office. Reporters are probably coming. You can't humiliate me like this." Clara's gaze was steady, almost surgical in its precision. "You humiliated yourself the moment you stole from me. That was different." Amelia's voice rose, raw and trembling. "I did that for family, for Victoria, for Liam, for us. You don't understand the kind of pressure I'm under. But this is different. You don't need that kind of money. You said you just wanted enough for your surgery. You can give me half. Just half. That's fair." Clara looked at her daughter, the perfect hair, the designer coat, the diamond ring glinting under the kitchen light, and felt something break quietly inside her. "Fair," she whispered. "Fair would have been asking before you took what was mine." Amelia took a shaky step forward, her voice dropping to a threatening whisper. "Mom, if you don't share it, I'll sue. Everyone already knows it was my gift. The law will side with me. There are witnesses. I have proof." Clara sighed, her face pale but composed. "Then do what you must, Amelia." And with that, she turned away, poured herself another cup of tea, and left her daughter standing speechless in the middle of the kitchen. By morning, the quiet became something else, something public. Amelia's tears had found their stage. Across TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, a grainy, emotionally charged video appeared. Her mascara smudged, voice trembling, she sobbed into the camera. "My own mother stole my lottery ticket, the Mother's Day gift I gave her. She's keeping all $150 million while I'm struggling to pay rent. This is emotional elder abuse in reverse. Please share this. No one deserves a mother like that." The clip exploded overnight. 2.1 million views in less than 24 hours. Hashtag Justice for Amelia trended across Chicago, and by noon hashtag GreedyMom was in the city's top 5 hashtags. The comments were merciless. She raised her daughter just to rob her? Classic boomer greed. I hope that old witch rots alone. Clara read none of them, but she didn't need to. Her phone buzzed relentlessly with messages she wished she'd never seen. Her old hospital colleagues texted with cautious sympathy. "Clara, this can't be true, right? You were always the kindest nurse I knew. Please tell me there's more to the story." And then came the final blow, one she hadn't expected. On LinkedIn, polished and public, Amelia's husband, Blake Langford, CFO of Langford Enterprises and heir to Victoria Langford's empire, made a post. "Sometimes age and money cloud a person's sense of family and morality. Tragic how greed can destroy the bonds that matter most." It was paired with a tasteful black and white photo of a wilted rose. Within hours, it gathered thousands of supportive comments, mostly from people who had never met Clara in their lives. The irony wasn't lost on her. A week ago, Blake had toasted to Mother Victoria, the matriarch who taught us generosity. Now he was branding his mother-in-law a thief. Clara sat at her small writing desk, staring at the framed photo of her late husband, James. His smile, warm and steady, seemed to cut through the noise in her mind. He had always warned her. When people talk about family and money in the same breath, what they really mean is ownership. She finally understood what he meant. The phone rang again, reporters, she assumed. She unplugged it. That night, she walked to the corner store for milk and bread. Neighbors who had once waved politely now averted their eyes. Mrs. Patel, who used to bring her fresh basil from her garden, crossed the street without a word. By the time she reached her apartment, Clara's pulse monitor was flashing red again. She sat on the couch, breathing through the ache, refusing to let tears fall. The television in the background played a morning talk show. A young host laughed as she introduced today's viral scandal from Chicago. A daughter betrayed by her own mother. Clara muted it. She looked down at the plastic sleeve in her hands, the same ticket that had once seemed like a miracle. Now it felt like a curse. But then slowly, something shifted in her expression. Beneath the fatigue and humiliation there was steel. She picked up her phone, not to scroll, not to respond, but to record. Her voice was calm, deliberate. "This is Clara Hughes. I've been accused by my daughter, Amelia Langford, of theft and emotional abuse. I will not defend myself with tears or hashtags. I'll defend myself with facts." She didn't post it yet. She saved the video, exhaled slowly, and looked out the window at the city skyline. A million lights glittering like indifferent stars. For years she had taught patients how to breathe through pain, how to survive the chaos of the ER. Now she was learning her own lesson. That silence could be more powerful than defense. Down the street, a delivery truck passed with the Langford Cruises logo painted across its side. Clara almost smiled. Life had a sense of humor even in its cruelty. "Let them talk," she whispered. "Truth doesn't need applause." She closed the blinds, turned off her phone, and went to bed, while the internet continued to burn her name like a brand. Outside, the city hummed with gossip. Inside, a single woman slept quietly, a Powerball ticket tucked beneath her pillow. Proof that fortune doesn't just test the greedy. Tests the good. It happened just after midnight. The city outside was silent, drenched in the soft orange glow of streetlights, when something extraordinary began to spread across the internet. At 2:03 a.m., a post appeared on Facebook from an unexpected account. Victoria Langford, the matriarch of the Langford family, Amelia's powerful, wealthy mother-in-law. The same woman who had been the reason for that fateful $15,000 gift in the first place. Her words were short, sharp, and devastating. "I was present at the Mother's Day dinner. I saw Amelia toss a $2 lottery ticket across the table and say clearly, 'Here, Mom. This one's yours. Happy Mother's Day.' There was no deal. No discussion. No conditions. Clara Hughes is the rightful owner of that ticket. As someone who has benefited from Clara's kindness, I am ashamed that my son and daughter-in-law have chosen to slander a woman who spent 30 years saving lives during 16-hour hospital shifts. The truth matters, even when it costs you your pride." Within minutes, the post began to catch fire. By 4 a.m., it had over 20,000 reactions and thousands of comments. Nurses, doctors, former patients, even strangers adding their voices of support. By noon, the number had soared to 73,000 shares. Hashtag Justice for Clara replaced hashtag GreedyMom on Chicago's trending board. The narrative flipped overnight. Talk show hosts who had mocked her now issued cautious apologies. Reporters scrambled to book interviews with Chicago's most composed millionaire. The same neighbors who once crossed the street to avoid her now left flowers on her doorstep. Clara didn't respond to any of them. She sat quietly at her kitchen table, her hands around a mug of tea gone cold, watching the morning light filter through her blinds. She had seen enough of public opinion to know how fickle it was. Applause could vanish as easily as outrage appeared. Still, something deep in her chest loosened. For the first time in weeks, her breath came easily. "Thank you, Victoria," she murmured under her breath, though she doubted the other woman would ever hear it. The official ceremony came 3 days later. The Illinois Lottery Commission invited Clara to receive her winnings in person at their Chicago headquarters. She had the option to do it privately, but she declined. "I've been dragged through the mud in public," she told the director calmly over the phone. "I'll stand in the light the same way." And so, on a crisp Thursday morning, cameras lined the marble steps of the Lottery Center. Reporters crowded behind velvet ropes. The air buzzed with flashes, microphones, and shouted questions. Inside, under the glaring studio lights, stood Clara Hughes, dressed simply in a navy blue suit and her old pearl earrings, the same pair she had worn the day she retired from the hospital. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back. She looked fragile but unshaken. The giant check stood behind her. $150 million printed in bold black ink. Her name spelled perfectly. The host smiled for the cameras, announcing, "And today, the Illinois Lottery is proud to present the $150 million Powerball prize to Ms. Clara Hughes of Chicago." Applause erupted. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks. But before Clara could step forward, a familiar voice screamed from the back of the room. Raw, desperate, and unmistakable. "That's my ticket." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amelia burst through the double doors, her hair disheveled, face streaked with mascara, waving a phone in her hand. "She stole it," she shouted, pointing at her mother. "That's my ticket. She took it from me." Security guards immediately moved in, blocking her path. But Amelia fought them, her voice rising hysterically. "You all saw the video. She's lying. That's my money. She's not even, she's insane." The room fell silent except for the sound of her sobs and camera shutters clicking like gunfire. Clara didn't flinch. She walked slowly to the podium, took the microphone, and looked out across the sea of flashing lights. Her voice was calm, steady, the voice of someone who had faced chaos before and learned not to fear it. "Before I accept this," she began, "I want to say something." Reporters leaned forward. "I've been called a thief, a liar, and a greedy woman," Clara said. "But the truth is simpler than that. My daughter gave me a $2 ticket as a Mother's Day gift. She didn't know what that ticket would become. Neither did I. But what this whole ordeal has taught me is that character is revealed not by what we lose, but by how we act when we think we're entitled to win." Her words cut through the murmurs like a scalpel. "I will not be using this money for yachts, mansions, or revenge. I will use it for what I've always believed in, saving lives." She paused, glancing briefly toward the back of the room where Amelia now stood motionless, her face pale, her tears drying under the camera lights. "I am establishing the Clara Heart Fund, a foundation dedicated to supporting single mothers working in healthcare and patients with heart conditions who can't afford treatment or insurance. I know what it's like to choose between medicine and rent. No one should have to make that choice." The room erupted in applause. Reporters clapped. Some even stood. But Clara wasn't finished. She looked directly at her daughter and said quietly into the microphone, "And to my child, I want you to know that I forgive you. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. You chose money over your mother, and that's a decision you'll have to live with. I've made mine." The sound of clicking cameras drowned out Amelia's soft gasp. Security escorted her out gently but firmly. The door closed behind her with a muffled thud. Clara turned back toward the audience. Her expression remained composed, but her eyes glistened, not with pride but with something deeper. Relief. The host approached with the ceremonial check. As she accepted it, Clara's fingers brushed the glossy paper. For a moment she felt its absurd weight, how numbers could make people forget their humanity. But she had already decided. She would not let this define her. After the ceremony, reporters clamored around her outside. "Ms. Hughes, how do you feel right now? Do you plan to reconcile with your daughter? What message would you like to give the public?" She smiled faintly and said, "That love is not a transaction, and that sometimes the greatest wealth a person can have is peace." She stepped into the waiting car as the cameras flashed, her silhouette disappearing behind tinted glass. Inside the car, she finally let out a long breath. The tension that had lived inside her chest for weeks dissolved into something softer. She looked down at her hands, still trembling slightly, and whispered to herself, "James, I hope you're watching. I did what was right." Outside, downtown Chicago gleamed in the sunlight, alive with noise and life. Somewhere above the skyscrapers, a billboard for Langford Luxury Cruises smiled down, almost mocking. Clara's lips curved into a wry smile. "Some gifts," she murmured. "Just keep on giving." As the car drove toward the foundation office where her lawyers waited, Clara leaned back, closed her eyes, and finally allowed herself to rest. For the first time in a long, long while, her heart felt light, not because of what she had gained, but because of what she had refused to lose. 2 days after the press conference, The front doorbell rang at dawn. The sound startled Clara out of her morning quiet. She had been sitting by the window with her tea, watching the fog drift off Lake Michigan, when the bell cut through the silence like an alarm. She opened the door and froze. Amelia stood on the porch, makeup smeared, hair unwashed, her eyes red and swollen. Behind her, the black SUV she once drove proudly as a Langford family car sat with one tire flat. "Mom!" Amelia's voice cracked. "Please. I didn't know where else to go." Clara didn't answer. She simply stepped aside and gestured toward the living room. Amelia sank to her knees before the coffee table, clutching a wad of crumpled papers. Bank notices, foreclosure warnings, a letter stamped final demand. "Mom, please listen," she began, voice trembling. "The bank took the house. Blake lost his job. The Langford company's under investigation, and his assets are frozen. We've got nothing left." We. She swallowed hard, tears streaming down her face. "We need help." Clara stood a few feet away, silent, her expression unreadable. "How much?" she asked finally. Amelia hesitated. $5 million. "Just 5, Mom. It's 3% of what you have. That's nothing to you. But for us, it's everything. We can rebuild, pay off the debt, start again. Please, Mom. You have no idea how bad it's gotten." Clara looked down at her chest, where beneath her blouse, the faint rhythmic click of her artificial heart valve whispered like a metronome of reason. She placed a hand there, feeling its steady pulse, and said quietly, "I gave you 30 years of my life, Amelia. Millions of minutes spent working double shifts, missing birthdays, missing sleep. Also, you could have more than I ever did." Tears welled in her eyes, but her tone didn't break. "I gave you this heart once, and it nearly stopped because of it. I won't give it away again. Mom, please." Amelia tried to reach for her hand. Clara took a step back. "No, sweetheart. You didn't just ask for money. You asked for the part of me that still hurts when I remember what you did. And I can't pay that price anymore." For a long moment, Amelia just knelt there, her sobs quiet but sharp. Then she rose, defeated, gathering her papers back into her purse. As she walked to the door, Clara said softly, "I hope you find something real this time. Not in a bank, not in a title, but in yourself." The door closed behind her with the gentlest click. Clara exhaled, slow and shaky. The ache in her chest wasn't from her heart valve. It was the ache of finality, the heavy peace that follows a goodbye you should have said years ago. 3 months later, Chicago was just a memory. Clara sold her house quietly, packed only what mattered. A few photo albums, her medical books, her father's wrench set, and the framed Powerball check she refused to hang on any wall. She left the rest behind. Naperville sat 40 miles west, far enough to be anonymous, near enough to still smell the city when the wind was right. There, on a quiet street by the railroad tracks, she found what she called her second chance. A dusty, abandoned auto garage with faded letters that still read Maggie's Motors. The walls smelled of oil and time. Rusted wrenches hung like relics from another life. But where most saw decay, Clara saw purpose. She bought it outright, spent weeks scrubbing, repainting, fixing the old neon sign, and when it lit up again, the name had changed. Clara's Heart and Chrome Restoration. Her new kind of hospital. But this time, instead of patients, she hired a team of 5 women. All retired nurses she'd once worked with in Chicago General. Women who knew precision, endurance, and compassion. Women who, like her, were searching for something meaningful to do with the years they had left. First, people laughed. Nurses? Restoring cars. But it worked. Their hands, once trained to heal flesh, adapted naturally to steel. They sanded, welded, polished, and painted with the same patience they'd once used stitching wounds. Under Clara's quiet leadership, Heart and Chrome became something more than a repair shop. It became a sanctuary, where every car restored symbolized a life rebuilt. And for every vehicle they completed, Clara donated one fully funded heart surgery to a patient without insurance. Word spread quickly through hospitals and local news. Patients who'd lost hope found miracles waiting in a garage. Mechanics from neighboring towns volunteered their weekends. Even a few doctors showed up, offering to perform procedures for free. Every corner of the garage held traces of her old life. The organized chaos, the hum of teamwork, the quiet triumph of saving something thought beyond repair. But the centerpiece was impossible to miss. Mounted in a custom glass frame near the entrance, beneath a soft golden light, hung the original $2 Powerball ticket, flattened, laminated, and displayed with a simple engraved plaque. From trash to heart, 150 million new beats. Visitors often stopped to stare, some smiling, some tearing up. Kids would ask, "Is that the ticket?" Clara would just nod. Yes, the one that changed everything, not because of the money, but because of what it taught me. Sometimes, on quiet afternoons, she'd catch herself tracing the air near that frame, remembering the hospital nights, the laughter at that fateful dinner, the sting of betrayal, and the calm of letting go. She didn't keep tabs on Amelia anymore. The world did that for her, articles, gossip, social media whispers. But Clara never clicked the links. She didn't need to. Her life was no longer about proving anyone wrong. It was about restoring Engine's heart's faith. One afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the garage and the metallic scent of polish filled the air, one of her employees, Margaret, asked gently, "Clara, do you ever regret it? Not helping her?" Clara looked up from the engine she was tuning, her eyes reflecting the copper light. "I did for a while," she admitted. "But regret fades when purpose takes its place." Margaret smiled softly. "You built something beautiful here." Clara returned the smile, then glanced once more at the framed ticket. "We all did," she said. "That's the thing about broken things, whether it's a car or a heart. Sometimes they just need the right hands to remind them they're still worth fixing." The hum of a newly restored engine filled the space, steady and strong, like the rhythm of her own heart. Outside, a child pressed his nose against the window, staring in awe at the glowing ticket on the wall. His mother whispered, "That's the lady who turned a lottery into a miracle." Clara didn't turn around. She just smiled quietly and kept working, the smell of motor oil and hope thick in the air. For the first time in her life, everything was running just as it should. Not by luck, not by chance, but by choice. And that, my friends, is the story of Clara Nguyen, the woman who turned betrayal into purpose, and a $2 mistake into 150 million heartbeats of hope. Sometimes life gives you pain not to punish you, but to redirect you toward the people, places, and peace you were meant to find. Clara didn't buy her freedom. She earned it, one act of courage at a time. If this story touched something in you, if it made you think of your own second chances, or the moments you finally learned to let go, then please, like, share, and subscribe. Not for the story, but for every woman who's ever been told she's too old, too tired, or too late to start again. Because sometimes the biggest jackpot isn't money, it's peace.